Imagine a wall so long that it stretches across mountains, deserts, and rivers. A wall built by emperors, guarded by soldiers, and remembered for thousands of years. Tonight, as you close your eyes, let me take you on a journey through time, the story of the Great Wall of China. From its very first stones to the legends whispered by the wind, you will discover the battles, the secrets, and the dreams that shaped one of the greatest wonders of the world. This is not just a wall, it is history carved into the earth. So relax, get comfortable, and fall asleep to the entire history of the Great Wall of China. Long before the first stone of the Great Wall was placed, China was already a land full of stories, legends, and struggles. Imagine standing in ancient China more than 2,000 years ago. The land was not united as one powerful nation. Instead, it was divided into many small kingdoms, each fighting to protect its own people and land. Mountains stood tall, rivers cut deep paths, and deserts stretched endlessly across the horizon. But the biggest problem was not just the land itself, it was the enemies who came from the outside. To the north of China lived fierce nomadic tribes, like the Xiongnu. These warriors were fast, skilled horse riders and known for sudden raids. They would sweep into villages, take food, capture people, and then vanish into the grasslands. For farmers who worked hard every day to grow their crops, this was terrifying. They needed safety, but their kings and lords had no single strong defense to protect everyone. In these times, kingdoms often built small walls of their own. These early walls were not the massive stone walls we imagine today. They were simple earthen mounds, wooden barriers, or ditches dug across the land. They were useful for a while, but they were weak and could easily be broken by strong enemies. Still, these little walls planted the first idea that barriers could slow down invaders. The thought of a great wall across the land was not yet born, but the seeds of the idea were already in the ground. Life in ancient China was tough. Farmers worked under the burning sun and cold winds. Soldiers stood watch along borders, often afraid of the next raid. Kings dreamed of controlling more land and having more power. And in the middle of all this, the idea of building something larger than anyone had ever imagined began to take shape. But it needed someone bold, someone ruthless, and someone determined to protect all of China. That person would soon arrive. His name was Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China. Before Qin Shi Huang rose to power, China was in constant chaos. This period was called the Warring States period, where 7 major kingdoms fought endlessly with one another. Each kingdom wanted to become the strongest. Villages burned, families suffered, and soldiers died in countless battles. But in the middle of this bloodshed, a dream was growing to unite China under one rule. And when Qin Shi Huang finally defeated the rival states, he did something no one had ever done before. He declared himself the first emperor of China. To keep his empire safe, he knew he needed a defense strong enough to last for generations. He remembered the smaller walls built by the old kingdoms and thought, why not connect them? Why not build something bigger? Something that will make enemies fear us. This was the beginning of the Great Wall, not just as a structure of stone and earth, but as a vision that would shape history. The land before the wall had been broken and vulnerable, but now, under one emperor, the idea of an endless wall began to rise from the dust of war. When Qin Shi Huang rose to power in 221 BCE, he was no ordinary ruler. He had defeated 6 rival kingdoms, ending the Warring States period and becoming the first emperor of a united China. His vision was grand. He wanted not only to rule the present, but also to shape the future. He dreamed of a China so strong that no enemy could ever break it. To achieve this, he needed more than just soldiers and weapons. He needed a shield that stretched across the land. The idea of the Great Wall was born here. Qin Shi Huang had seen the smaller walls built by the old kingdoms. Some were made of packed earth, others with wooden stakes. They were short, scattered, and weak. But the emperor had a bigger dream. He ordered his men to tear down those smaller walls and connect them into one massive barrier. This would not just be a line of defense, it would be a symbol of his power, a message to the world that China was strong and united. The work began with incredible speed. Qin Shi Huang commanded hundreds of thousands of workers to start construction. His workers were not volunteers. Many were farmers taken from their fields, prisoners captured in wars, and even scholars who had angered the emperor. Soldiers also joined the labor. The task was brutal. Under the hot sun, workers dug into the earth, carried heavy stones, and built walls that stretched across mountains and rivers. The Great Wall became a graveyard for many. As thousands died from exhaustion, hunger, and harsh weather, it was said that the bones of the dead were buried inside the wall itself. Whether legend or truth, it gave the wall another name, the longest cemetery in the world. But despite the suffering, the wall grew. It was not made of fine stone at this stage. Instead, it was built from tamped earth, tightly packed and hardened into strong layers. On top, watchtowers rose like sharp eyes, keeping watch over the horizon. Fires could be lit in these towers to send signals quickly across great distances. If enemies approached, one flame would spark another, spreading the warning from tower to tower like a chain of fire. The wall was not just about defense, it was also about control. By building the wall, Qin Shi Huang controlled the movement of people. Traders, travelers, and even soldiers had to pass through gates guarded by the emperor's men. This allowed him to collect taxes, stop smugglers, and keep the empire secure from both outside invaders and inside rebels. The wall was a weapon of power, not only against enemies, but also against his own people. Still, the emperor's dream was not complete. He wanted the wall to stretch as far as the eye could see, protecting every border of his empire. His ambition was endless, but his life was not. In 210 BCE, Qin Shi Huang died during one of his long journeys across China. Though the wall stood, it was far from the massive stone structure we imagine today. Yet, his vision had planted something deep in Chinese history. The idea that the empire could be defended by an unbroken wall. For Qin Shi Huang, the wall was not only about defense, it was about immortality. He believed that if the wall lasted forever, so would his empire. And though his dynasty fell soon after his death, his dream of the wall lived on. Future emperors would continue his work, each adding their own piece to the great chain of stone and earth. Qin Shi Huang had started something extraordinary. With blood, sweat, and fear, the first steps of the Great Wall were carved into history. And this was only the beginning of its story. After the death of Qin Shi Huang, his mighty dynasty collapsed quickly, but the idea of the Great Wall did not die with him. A new dynasty, the Han Dynasty, rose to power in 206 BCE and ruled for more than 400 years. The Han emperors saw the wall not just as a military defense, but as a symbol of China's strength and unity. They took what Qin Shi Huang had started and expanded it far beyond what anyone had imagined. During the Han Dynasty, China grew into one of the most powerful empires in the world. Trade, culture, and inventions flourished. But with all this progress came new dangers. The nomadic tribes of the north, especially the Xiongnu, remained a constant threat. They attacked villages, stole livestock, and disrupted trade. To protect their people and secure their empire, the Han rulers realized they needed to strengthen and expand the Great Wall. Unlike the Qin Wall, which was mainly made of tamped earth, the Han engineers began to improve the construction techniques. They built longer stretches using bricks, stones, and wooden frames. These walls were tougher, stronger, and more permanent. They stretched the wall thousands of miles across mountains, deserts, and plains. In some areas, the Han even built double walls, two parallel walls with space in between, making it even harder for invaders to break through. But the Han Dynasty's greatest achievement was not only in building walls, they also used the Great Wall to protect something far more valuable: the Silk Road. This was the famous trade route that connected China to the Middle East, India, and even Europe. Silk, spices, gold, and ideas all traveled along this path. For the first time in history, the East and West were connected through trade. The Great Wall stood as a guardian of this route, protecting merchants and goods from raids. Without the wall, the Silk Road may never have become so successful. Life along the Han Wall was busy and harsh. Soldiers were stationed in forts and watchtowers, always scanning the horizon for signs of trouble. These men lived far from home, enduring freezing winters and scorching summers. They often grew their own food near the wall, since supplies from the capital could take months to arrive. For them, the wall was not just a line of defense. It was their home, their prison, and their battlefield. The wall also became a place of culture. Alongside soldiers, traders, farmers, and travelers passed through its gates. Languages mixed, goods exchanged hands, and ideas spread. The wall was no longer just a wall. It became a bridge of cultures. Still, the cost of building and maintaining the Han Wall was enormous. It drained the empire's money, resources, and manpower. Many workers died building it, just as in Qin Shi Huang's time. Yet, despite the hardships, the wall endured. It stretched more than 5,000 miles by the height of the Han Dynasty, a true wonder of the ancient world. The Han rulers had taken the dream of Qin Shi Huang and expanded it beyond imagination. The Great Wall was no longer just an emperor's vision, had become the shield of a great civilization. It stood tall against enemies, protected trade, and showed the world the power of China. When people imagine the Great Wall of China, they often think of tall stone towers, winding paths across mountains, and an endless structure stretching to the horizon. But behind this wall stood soldiers who guarded it, and workers who built and repaired it. Their lives were not filled with glory. Instead, they were filled with hardship, loneliness, and endless duty. For the soldiers stationed on the wall, every day was a test of strength and patience. They lived in small forts, barracks, or watchtowers, often hundreds of miles away from their families. The weather was extreme. In winter, the wind howled like a beast, cutting through their clothes and freezing their bones. In summer, the sun burned hot and water was scarce. Many soldiers had to dig wells or carry water long distances just to survive. Food was often simple and boring: millet, dried vegetables, and sometimes meat if they were lucky. Some grew small crops near the wall, but the land was harsh and dry. Soldiers worked long shifts, standing watch on the towers day and night. They scanned the horizon for any signs of movement: dust, clouds from enemy horses, or smoke rising from distant fires. Their duty was simple but crucial. If they spotted danger, they had to light a signal fire. These fires, once lit, could travel messages across hundreds of miles in a single night. One flame on a tower would be seen by the next, then the next, until the capital itself knew of an invasion. In this way, the Great Wall became not only a wall, but also a messenger. But life was not only about watching. Soldiers also had to repair the wall. Storms, rain, and wind damaged it constantly. Stones would crumble, earth would erode, and wooden gates would rot. Every soldier was also a builder, carrying stones, mixing mud, and patching weak points. For them, the wall was alive, always needing care. If the soldiers' lives were hard, the workers who built the wall suffered even more. Thousands of laborers, peasants, prisoners, and even scholars punished by the emperor were forced to work. Many were taken from their homes, leaving their families behind. They carried heavy loads on their backs, dug into rocky mountainsides, and hauled stones up steep cliffs. With little food, harsh weather, and endless labor, many died on the job. It is said that their bodies were buried within the wall itself. This gave rise to the haunting legend that the Great Wall is also the longest graveyard on Earth. Despite this suffering, there were moments of humanity. Soldiers sometimes carved messages or drawings into the stones, leaving behind traces of their lives. Farmers near the wall brought goods to sell, and travelers passed through its gates, bringing stories from faraway lands. Now, in these moments, the wall was not just a military barrier, it was a living community. For the common people, the wall was a double-edged sword. On one hand, it offered safety from invasions. On the other hand, it demanded their sweat, blood, and even their lives. To serve on the wall was considered both an honor and a punishment. Many who went never returned home. Families would wait for years, sometimes forever, for their sons and fathers to come back. The Great Wall may look silent today, but if you listen closely, you can almost hear the echoes of those who lived there. The footsteps of soldiers pacing the towers, the cries of workers lifting stones, the whispers of families praying for their loved ones, all of these are part of the wall, as true history. It is not just a monument of stone and earth, it is a monument of people. The Great Wall of China was not just a shield against enemies, it was also a gateway to the world. During the Han Dynasty, when trade began to flourish, the Great Wall became closely connected to one of history's most famous trade routes, the Silk Road. This road was not a single path. The network of routes that stretched from China across Central Asia, the Middle East, and all the way to Europe. Along this road traveled silk, spices, gold, glass, ideas, and even cultures. And at the heart of it stood the Great Wall, guarding China's most precious treasures. The name Silk Road comes from one of China's greatest inventions. At that time, the Chinese were the only people in the world who knew how to produce it. Soft, shiny, and light, silk became one of the most desired fabrics in the world. Rich men and women in Rome wore silk robes as a sign of wealth. Kings and queens demanded it in their palaces. But silk was not the only thing that traveled this road. Alongside it came porcelain, paper, gunpowder, and tea gifts of Chinese culture to the world. But the Silk Road was not just about goods, it was about ideas. Through this route, religions like Buddhism traveled from India into China. Traders and travelers brought stories, languages, music, and inventions. It was like a river of culture flowing across continents. And the Great Wall was the dam that both protected and controlled this river. The wall's gates became checkpoints where traders had to pass. Soldiers guarded these gates carefully, collected taxes on the goods, inspected travelers, and made sure no spies or enemies slipped through. This gave the Chinese emperors control over the movement of wealth and people. The Great Wall turned into more than a wall. It became a border, a customs post, and a symbol of power. Life at these gates was lively and colorful. Merchants from distant lands, wearing different clothes and speaking different languages, crowded the marketplaces. Camels loaded with goods stood waiting while traders bargained loudly over prices. Soldiers kept watch, ready to defend if trouble arose. Musicians and storytellers entertained the crowds. In these bustling towns along the wall, East truly met West. Yet the Silk Road was also dangerous. Raiders lurked in deserts and mountains, ready to attack caravans. Sandstorms could swallow entire groups of travelers. Water was scarce, and food was often hard to find. This made the protection of the Great Wall even more important. Without its watchtowers and soldiers, trade might never have been possible on such a scale. For China, the Silk Road was not just about sending goods out, it was also about bringing wealth and knowledge in. Through it, China gained horses, glassware, new fruits, and even advanced medical knowledge from other cultures. The world grew closer together, step by step, trade by trade. And the Great Wall stood as the silent guardian of this exchange.
The connection between the Great Wall and the Silk Road shows that the wall was more than just a military barrier.
It was part of a global system, a bridge that linked civilizations thousands of miles apart.
It protected China's treasures, allowed its culture to spread, and ensured that the empire remained strong at the crossroads of the ancient world. The Tang dynasty, which began in 618 CE, is often called the Golden Age of China. It was a time of poetry, art, invention, and prosperity. Cities grew larger, culture flourished, and China became one of the most advanced civilizations in the world. But even during this golden age, the Great Wall of China continued to play an important role, protecting the empire and supporting trade along the Silk Road. The Tang emperors were wise rulers who understood that power was not only about fighting wars, it was also about building strong relationships through trade and culture. Under their rule, the Silk Road reached its peak. Merchants from Persia, India, Arabia, and even distant Europe traveled thousands of miles to reach China. They brought with them spices, jewels, glass, and stories of lands far away. In return, they carried back Chinese silk, porcelain, and paper. The Great Wall's gates became busier than ever, buzzing with travelers and traders. During the Tang dynasty, the wall was not expanded as much as before, but it was maintained and strengthened where needed. The empire was so powerful at this time that enemies feared its strength. The Great Wall served as a reminder to outsiders that China was guarded and united. Soldiers still stood watch, but they were not always fighting. Instead, many times they were keeping peace, watching over merchants, and ensuring safe passage across the borders. What made the Tang era truly special was the blending of cultures. Along the Silk Road and near the wall, one could hear many languages: Chinese, Persian, Arabic, Indian, and even Greek. Marketplaces near the wall became melting pots of cultures. Traders exchanged not only goods, but also music, fashion, and religion. Buddhist monks from India walked the same roads as Arab merchants and Roman travelers. The Great Wall was the silent witness to this incredible meeting of civilizations. Life for soldiers on the wall was still hard, but compared to earlier times, it was somewhat easier. The Tang dynasty was rich and stable, which meant better supplies for the troops. Forts along the wall became more developed, with stronger structures and better living conditions. Some even grew into small towns where families of soldiers lived. Travelers could rest there, creating a lively and multicultural atmosphere. But the Thames rulers also used the wall for control. Just like in earlier dynasties, the gates of the Great Wall served as checkpoints. Taxes were collected, travelers were questioned, and goods were carefully inspected. This system brought huge wealth to the empire. With every silk bundle and bag of spices that crossed through the wall, China grew richer and more powerful. The Tang dynasty also left behind something beautiful: art and poetry inspired by the Silk Road and the Great Wall. Poets described the long journeys of travelers, the courage of soldiers on the towers, and the majesty of the endless wall across the mountains. Their words remind us that the wall was not just a military structure. It was part of the culture, a symbol of China's greatness. In the Tang dynasty, the Great Wall stood not only as a shield, but as a stage where the world met China. It protected the empire's borders, supported the flow of trade, and witnessed the richest cultural exchange in history. This was truly a golden age, and the wall, as always, stood firm through it all. As time passed, China's golden age began to fade. After the Tang dynasty, new dynasties rose and fell. Some were strong, while others struggled to keep the empire together. During this period of weakness, a new and terrifying power appeared from the north of Mongols. Fierce warriors on horseback, the Mongols were unlike any enemy China had faced before. They would test the strength of the Great Wall like never before. The Mongols were masters of the open grasslands, known as the steppes. They were skilled horsemen who could ride for days without rest. They carried powerful bows and could shoot arrows with deadly accuracy, even while galloping at full speed. Their raids were fast and brutal. Villages and towns near the northern borders lived in constant fear of their attacks. The Great Wall, once a strong shield, now faced one of its greatest challenges. During the Song Dynasty 962-1279 CE, the empire focused more on culture, inventions, and trade than on building new parts of the wall. Gunpowder, printing, and the compass were invented, making China advanced in many ways. But the Song rulers were weaker in military power. They relied heavily on the old walls for protection, but the Mongols were clever. Instead of attacking the strongest sections of the wall, they often found weak spots or bribed gatekeepers to let them through. For the soldiers who guarded the wall during this time, life was frightening. The Mongols were unpredictable. One moment the horizon was empty, and the next it was filled with clouds of dust as thousands of riders stormed forward. Watchtowers lit their warning fires, but sometimes it was too late. The Mongols struck quickly, stole supplies, and vanished back into the steppes before Chinese forces could gather. Eventually, a powerful leader rose among the Mongols, Genghis Khan. His armies swept across Asia, conquering lands from China to Europe. Even the mighty Great Wall could not stop him. In the early 13th century, the Mongols broke through the defenses and invaded China. They eventually overthrew the Song dynasty and established their own dynasty in China, the Yuan dynasty. For the first time in centuries, the Great Wall had failed. Its towers, gates, and long stretches of stone could not hold back the unstoppable force of the Mongols. Yet the wall was not useless. It slowed the enemy down, delayed their movements, and gave people time to escape. It reminded the world that China would not give up easily, even against the strongest of foes. Under the Yuan dynasty, the Mongols did not focus much on the wall. Since they controlled both sides of it, they had little reason to keep repairing it. The wall, once built with sweat and blood, began to fall into neglect in many places. Parts of it crumbled, stones fell, and weeds grew, but the memory of its power remained alive. The Chinese people still believed in the idea of the wall, even when it was broken. The story of the Mongol invasions shows us that even the strongest walls cannot stop determined enemies forever. Yet, the Great Wall had done something important. It had slowed down one of the most powerful armies in history. Without it, China might have fallen much faster. This chapter in the wall's history was not one of triumph, but of struggle. Still, it set the stage for a future dynasty that would rebuild the Great Wall on a scale larger than ever before. The wall had been broken, but it would rise again. After the Mongols ruled China under the Yuan dynasty, the Chinese people longed to take back their land. In 1368, the Ming dynasty rose to power. And with it came one of the most determined eras in the history of the Great Wall. The Ming emperors remembered the destruction and suffering caused by the Mongols, and they vowed never to let it happen again. Their answer was clear: rebuild the Great Wall stronger than ever before this time, not from earth or wood, but from solid stone and brick. The Ming rulers knew that simply patching up the old walls would not be enough. They needed something massive, permanent, and nearly impossible to break through. So they launched one of the greatest construction projects in history. For more than 2 centuries, from the late 14th century into the 17th century, millions of workers, soldiers, peasants, and even prisoners were forced to build. They dug into mountains, carried heavy stones, and laid bricks one after another. The result was the iconic Great Wall we imagine today, tall, strong, and winding like a dragon across the land. The Ming Wall was different from all those before it. Instead of tamped earth, it was built with hard stone on the outside and filled with packed earth inside. Bricks were fired in kilns and transported across rough landscapes. Some were carried by mules, others on human backs, and sometimes even rolled along the ground. Mortar made of lime and sticky rice was used to hold the stones together. This unique mixture made the wall incredibly strong, and parts of it still stand firm today after hundreds of years. One of the Ming dynasty's greatest innovations was the watchtower system. Tall towers were placed every few hundred meters along the wall, allowing soldiers to see far across the horizon. These towers were not just for watching, they were also small fortresses. Soldiers lived inside them, stored weapons, and lit signal fires when danger approached. A single tower could send a message across miles of wall in minutes. Smoke signals by day and fire signals by night created a communication network far faster than messengers on horseback. The Ming Wall also had fortresses and passes which acted as military bases and trading checkpoints. The most famous of these is Jiayu Pass in the Gansu province, which marked the western end of the wall. Another is Shanhai Pass, where the wall meets the Bahai Sea. These massive gates were designed with heavy wooden doors, iron reinforcements, and traps to slow down invaders. They became symbols of the Ming dynasty's determination to guard their empire. Life along the Ming Wall was a mixture of danger and routine. Soldiers trained, patrolled, and repaired sections of the wall. Farmers lived nearby, supplying food and goods to the garrisons. In times of peace, these areas became small communities. But in times of war, the wall turned into a front line. The Mongols and other nomadic tribes continued to test the defenses, but the Ming soldiers stood ready. The scale of the Ming Wall was extraordinary. By the time construction slowed, the wall stretched over 5,500 miles, twisting through mountains, deserts, rivers, and grasslands. Its width was enough to let horses and carts travel on top, and its height was intimidating to anyone who dared approach. For centuries, this wall served as the backbone of China's defense. Yet building such a wall came at a heavy price. Like in earlier dynasties, countless workers lost their lives due to exhaustion, harsh weather, and dangerous conditions. Entire families were torn apart as men were taken from villages to work on the construction. Suffering was great, but the result was lasting. The Ming dynasty's wall is the reason the Great Wall of China is recognized as one of the world's greatest wonders today. It was not just a military structure, it was a statement of power, strength, and determination. Even though enemies would continue to threaten China, the Ming Wall stood as a reminder. China was prepared. And this time, the empire would not fall easily. The Ming dynasty's version of the Great Wall was not just big, it was a masterpiece of engineering and design. While earlier walls were simple earth mounds or rough stone barriers, the Ming Wall was carefully planned, built with strong materials, and designed to serve both military and practical purposes. This was the wall that gave the Great Wall its iconic image: tall, winding, and powerful. One of the most striking features of the Ming Wall was its construction material. Instead of only using earth, the Ming builders used stone, brick, and mortar. The outer layers were built with strong stone blocks, while the inside was filled with a mixture of earth, rubble, and more stones. This made the wall both solid and heavy, able to withstand attacks and last for centuries. In some areas, sticky rice mortar was used, which gave the bricks incredible strength. Scientists today have studied these walls and found that this mixture made the construction tougher than many modern buildings. The Ming Wall was also designed with practical dimensions. On average, it was about 25 feet high, taller than a two-story building, and around 20 feet wide at the base. At the top, it was wide enough for soldiers, horses, and carts to travel. Imagine an army marching along the wall, soldiers side by side, while supplies and weapons were carried behind them. The wall was not just a barrier, it was also a highway for soldiers and goods. Another key part of the design was the watchtowers. These were built at regular intervals, usually every few hundred meters. Each tower was different in size and shape depending on the terrain. Some were square, others round, and many had 2 or 3 levels. Soldiers used the top level to watch the land and send signals, while the lower levels stored weapons, food, and supplies. These towers were like the eyes of the wall, always scanning the horizon. Signals were sent using a clever system. During the day, soldiers lit smoke signals, and at night, they lit fires. For example, 1 column of smoke meant a small number of enemies, while 5 columns of smoke meant a massive invasion. This system allowed warnings to travel hundreds of miles in a short time. The Great Wall became not just a wall, but also an ancient communication network. The Ming Wall also included fortresses and passes, which were larger structures built at key points. These acted as command centers and safe havens for soldiers. Famous passes like Jiayu Pass in the west and Shanhai Pass in the east were built like mini-cities. They had massive gates, tall walls, moats, and even marketplaces. Travelers and traders passed through these gates, and officials collected taxes on goods. The wall was both a military defense and an economic tool. Even the natural landscape was used in the design. The wall was built to follow the ridges of mountains, making it even harder for enemies to climb. In the deserts, it was reinforced with stone and wooden beams to prevent sand from swallowing it. In the grasslands, ditches and barriers were added for extra protection. The Ming architects understood the land and used it to their advantage. From a distance, the Ming Wall looked like a massive dragon, stretching endlessly across mountains and valleys. Up close, it was a blend of strength and intelligence, combining military science with practical needs. Every brick, every tower, and every gate had a purpose. It was a design that made the wall not only a shield, but also a living, breathing part of the empire. The architecture of the Ming Wall is one reason why it has survived for so long. Even today, hundreds of years later, large sections still stand tall. Travelers who walk on it are not only walking on stone and brick, they are walking on the brilliance of ancient engineers and the determination of a dynasty that wanted to build something eternal. The Great Wall of China was not just a beautiful piece of architecture, it was built for a purpose: defense and warfare. For centuries, China faced threats from the north, especially from powerful nomadic tribes like the Mongols. The wall was designed to slow these invaders, give soldiers an advantage, and protect the heart of the empire. But how exactly did it work in times of war? The first role of the wall was simple but powerful: delay. The Great Wall stretched across deserts, mountains, and grasslands, creating a massive barrier. For enemy armies, crossing it was not easy. Wall walls, deep ditches, and steep climbs forced invaders to slow down. While they struggled, Chinese soldiers on top of the wall could rain down arrows, roll stones, or pour boiling oil on them. This delay gave the Chinese army time to gather reinforcements. Second, the wall worked as a watchtower network. With thousands of towers spread across its length, soldiers always had a view of the land ahead. If enemy horsemen approached, The soldiers would light smoke signals in the daytime or fire signals at night. These signals spread across the wall like a chain reaction. Within hours, even the emperor in the capital could know about an invasion hundreds of miles away. In a time before telephones or radios, this was an incredible system of communication. Third, the wall was used for strategic battles, instead of facing invaders in the open, where nomadic horsemen had the advantage. Chinese soldiers could fight from behind strong stone walls. Archers on top had higher ground and could shoot farther. Heavy gates forced enemies into narrow passages where they became easy targets. At the famous passes like Jiayu and Shanhai, enemies had to break through layer after layer of defenses walls. Moats, iron gates, and traps before they could even enter Chinese land. The wall also had a psychological effect. To see a massive wall stretching as far as the eye could see was intimidating. For many invaders, the wall itself sent a message. China was strong, organized, and prepared. Even if the wall could be crossed, it made enemies think twice before attacking. But the wall was not perfect. History shows that determined enemies, like the Mongols and later the Manchus, sometimes found ways around it. Some bribed gatekeepers to open doors. Others attacked weak sections. And in some cases, invaders simply rode around the end of the wall. So while the wall slowed them, it could not always stop them. Still, the Great Wall worked in another way. It protected China's economy. Traders and caravans along the Silk Road felt safer knowing that the wall was there. Bandits and raiders found it harder to attack merchants near the border. By keeping trade routes secure, the wall supported China's wealth and power. For the soldiers who fought on the wall, every battle was fierce. Arrows filled the air, drums beat loudly, and fire signals lit up the night sky. Some battles ended in victory, with enemies pushed back into the steppes. Others ended in tragedy, with the wall stained by the blood of fallen defenders. Either way, the wall stood as the front line of China's defense. In the end, the Great Wall was more than stone and brick. It was a weapon of war. It was a shield, a sword, and a warning all at once. Even when it failed, it gave China time to prepare. Even when it was broken, it showed the world the strength of an empire that refused to fall without a fight. The Great Wall of China was more than a military defense. It was a symbol, a message carved into the land, stretching across mountains and deserts, telling the world about the strength of China. For emperors, the wall was not only about stopping enemies, it was also about showing their power, uniting their people, and reminding everyone that China was a great and eternal civilization. When Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China, began the wall, he wanted to do more than protect his empire. He wanted to prove that he was the ruler of all China, the man who had united the warring states. By ordering hundreds of thousands of workers to build the wall, he showed his authority over life and death. The wall became a tool of fear and respect. It told his enemies that they could not cross. And it told his people that their emperor's power stretched farther than the eye could see. Later dynasties, like the Han and the Ming, used the wall in the same way. The Han rulers made the wall a guardian of the Silk Road, showing the world that China was rich and secure. The Ming emperors rebuilt it with stone and brick, making it bigger, stronger, and more permanent. For them, the wall was like a crown, sitting proudly on the head of their empire. But the wall's power was not only for outsiders. Inside China, the wall became a symbol of unity. China was a huge land, with many different regions, climates, and cultures. The north was dry and cold, the south was warm and green, the east was full of rivers, and the west had deserts and mountains. For centuries, it was difficult to bring all these regions together. But the Great Wall, stretching across so many landscapes, reminded people that they were part of one nation. It was a line that said, "Here is China, and we are one." The wall also gave people a sense of pride. Though it was built with suffering and sacrifice, it was also a wonder that belonged to all Chinese. Even the poorest farmer could look at the wall and feel part of something greater. It was not just a structure of stone, it was a symbol of the courage, endurance, and determination of their ancestors. For the emperors, the wall was also a way of showing legitimacy. Building or repairing the wall was like a promise. I will protect you, I will defend you, and I will keep China strong. Every dynasty that worked on the wall tied its name to its greatness. The people judged their rulers not only by their armies and taxes, but also by how well they cared for the wall. Even beyond China, the Great Wall became a symbol. Travelers from faraway lands returned home with stories of an endless wall that stretched across mountains like a dragon. To them, it showed the might of China. It was something no other nation had ever built. It was proof that China was not just a country, it was a civilization unlike any other. In the end, the Great Wall's stones carried two messages. Two enemies, it said, do not cross. China is strong. To the people of China, it said, you are united, and together you are eternal. This is why, even today, the Great Wall is not only a structure of history, it is a symbol of power and unity that lives on in the hearts of millions. The Great Wall of China may look like a wonder of stone and brick, but behind every tower and every stretch of wall lies a story of pain, sacrifice, and death. While emperors dreamed of protection and glory, ordinary people paid the price. The human cost of building the Great Wall was enormous. So enormous that some historians believe it is the largest graveyard in the world. From the time of Qin Shi Huang, workers were taken from all across the empire to build the wall. They were not volunteers. Many were farmers forced to leave their fields, prisoners of war, or even scholars punished for speaking against the emperor. Ordinary men and women were marched to distant lands, far from their families, to work on the wall. For them, it was not a job, it was a sentence. The work was brutally hard. The wall stretched across deserts, steep mountains, and frozen plains. Workers carried heavy stones on their backs, dug deep foundations, and hauled bricks under the burning sun or freezing snow. Food was scarce, and many lived on only a bowl of rice a day. Water was often dirty or unavailable, and disease spread quickly in the labor camps. The weather itself became a cruel enemy. In the mountains, workers froze to death in the winter. In the deserts, heat and sandstorms made survival almost impossible. Many were buried alive by landslides, accidents, or collapsing walls. Others died from exhaustion, their bodies simply unable to continue. It is said that for every mile of the Great Wall, hundreds of lives were lost. Legends say that the dead were buried inside the wall itself. Whether true or not, these stories gave the wall a dark reputation. People whispered that the Great Wall was haunted by the ghosts of workers who never returned home. Some even called it the Wall of Bones. One of the most famous stories is that of Meng Junnu, a woman whose husband was forced to work on the wall. When he died and was buried there, she wept so bitterly that part of the wall is said to have collapsed. Her story became a symbol of the suffering and injustice behind the wall's construction. But the suffering was not only physical, it was emotional. Families were torn apart. Wives never saw their husbands again. Children grew up without fathers. Villages lost entire generations of men to the wall. For many people, the wall was not a symbol of protection but of pain. It represented the power of emperors who demanded everything, even the lives of their subjects. And yet, despite all this suffering, the wall stood. The sacrifices of millions built something that would last for centuries. Their names are forgotten, but their work remains in every stone. Without them, there would be no Great Wall for the world to admire today. The human cost of the Great Wall is a reminder that history's greatest wonders often come with hidden stories of tragedy. Behind its strength lies weakness, behind its glory lies grief, and behind its beauty lies blood. The Great Wall is not only a monument to China's power, it is also a silent memorial to the countless lives lost in its creation. The Great Wall of China is not only a monument of stone and earth, it is also a monument of the imagination. Over thousands of years, the wall became part of Chinese culture, inspiring legends, myths, poems, and stories that were passed down from generation to generation. These tales made the wall more than a defense, it became a living part of the people's hearts. One of the most famous legends is the story of Meng Junnu. Her husband was taken away by the emperor's men to build the wall. She waited for him for years, but he never came home. Finally, she traveled to the wall to find him, only to learn that he had died and was buried inside. Overcome with grief, she cried so hard that part of the wall collapsed, revealing his bones. This story became a symbol of love, loyalty, and the pain that ordinary people endured during the wall's construction. Even today, statues of Meng Junnu stand near sections of the wall. reminding visitors of the human suffering behind its stones. Another legend says that the wall is like a sleeping dragon, stretching across the land. The Chinese dragon is a symbol of power, wisdom, and protection. People believed the wall followed the dragon's back, twisting over mountains and valleys. This gave the wall a magical image, as if it were alive and watching over China. In folklore, the wall was also seen as a place of spirits and ghosts. Since so many workers died building it, people believed their souls remained trapped in the stones. Travelers told stories of hearing whispers at night, or seeing ghostly figures along the towers. For some, this made the wall a place of fear. For others, it made it sacred, like a giant tomb holding the memory of China's ancestors. Poets and writers also found inspiration in the wall. Tang Dynasty poets wrote verses comparing the endless wall to the endless struggles of life. Some poems praised the bravery of soldiers who defended it, while others mourned the men who never returned. The wall became a symbol of both strength and sadness, of both glory and sacrifice. Even in Chinese opera and folk songs, the Great Wall plays an important role. Songs were sung about the soldiers who guarded it, about the workers who built it, and about the families who waited for their loved ones. These songs gave voice to the ordinary people whose lives were tied to the wall. The wall also became connected to Chinese festivals and traditions. In some regions, families made offerings to the spirits of the dead near the wall. Others prayed at its gates for protection from evil. The wall was not just a military barrier, it was part of the spiritual world of the people. In modern times, the Great Wall has continued to inspire art, movies, books, and even video games. It is a symbol of China's history, appearing on stamps, coins, and paintings. But at its heart, the cultural meaning of the wall still lies in the stories of love, loss, courage, and endurance that people created around it. The Great Wall is more than stones. It is a storybook, written not with ink, but with the voices of countless generations. Its legends remind us that history is not only about emperors and wars, but also about the dreams and fears of the people who lived in its shadow. By the 1600s, the Great Wall of China stood taller and stronger than ever before. The Ming Dynasty had rebuilt it with stone and brick, adding towers, gates, and fortresses that stretched for thousands of miles. To many, it seemed unbreakable. But history shows that no wall, no matter how strong, can last forever against both enemies outside and weakness inside. The Ming Dynasty's greatest enemy was not just the Manchus from the north. It was also the corruption and decline within their own empire. The Manchus were a powerful people from Northeast Asia. Skilled horsemen and hunters, they grew stronger as the Ming grew weaker. At first, the Great Wall slowed them down. Ming soldiers stood guard at the passes, and the tall towers sent out signals when raiders approached. But over time, the Ming armies became less disciplined. Corruption spread among generals and officials. Soldiers were poorly paid, supplies ran short, and many sections of the wall were left without proper defense. The Manchus tested the wall again and again. Sometimes they attacked directly, charging at the gates with speed and force. Other times they used clever tricks. They bribed guards, bought loyalty with gifts, or slipped through weak points at night. Each time the Ming defenses grew weaker. The wall was strong, but the people defending it were no longer united. One of the most famous events came at Shanhai Pass, where the wall meets the Bahai Sea. This pass was called the First Pass Under Heaven, and it was one of the most important gates of the Great Wall. Whoever controlled this pass controlled the road to Beijing, the Ming capital. For years, the Ming used this gate to block the Manchus. But in 1644, something shocking happened. The Ming dynasty was collapsing from within. Rebels inside China, led by a man named Li Zicheng, had captured Beijing. The last Ming emperor, desperate and hopeless, took his own life. Meanwhile, a Ming general named Wu Songui faced a terrible choice at Shanhai Pass. He could fight both the rebels inside and the Manchus outside, or he could choose one side. In the end, he made a decision that changed history. He opened the gates of the Great Wall and allowed the Manchu army to march through. With the wall breached, the Manchus swept into China. They crushed the rebels and took control of Beijing. Soon after, they established the Qing dynasty, which would rule China for nearly 300 years. The Ming dynasty had fallen not because the wall was weak, but because betrayal and division had opened the way. This story shows that walls, no matter how strong, depend on the people who guard them. The Great Wall was designed to keep out enemies, but when its defenders were divided, it could not stand. The Manchus proved that determination, strategy, and unity could succeed where brute force failed. For centuries, the Ming Wall had been the pride of China, stretched across the mountains like a dragon, a symbol of power and unity. But in the end, it was undone not by its stones crumbling, but by the weakness of human hearts. The fall of the Ming dynasty marked a turning point in Chinese history. The Great Wall still stood, but its role changed. Under the new Qing rulers, the wall was no longer expanded as before. It became less of a shield and more of a symbol, a reminder of the past glories and failures of the dynasties that had built it. When the Manchus entered China in 1644 and founded the Qing dynasty, the role of the Great Wall began to change. For centuries, it had been the empire's strongest shield. Rebuilt and expanded by the Ming with stone, bricks, and towers that stretched for thousands of miles. But under the Qing, the wall slowly began to lose its importance. The reason was simple. The Manchus themselves came from the north, the very side the wall had been built to defend against. Once they controlled China, the wall no longer separated enemies from the empire. Instead, it cut through lands that were now part of their rule. Because of this, the Qing emperors saw little need to pour resources into maintaining or expanding the wall. At first, the wall remained useful as a boundary marker and a checkpoint for trade. Soldiers still guarded certain gates, and merchants still passed through with goods along the old Silk Road. But gradually, many parts of the wall were abandoned. Watchtowers crumbled, gates rotted, and stones fell into ruins. The massive effort of repairing such a long structure was too costly, and the Qing leaders preferred to spend money on other projects, like expanding trade with the West and strengthening their capital. Yet even though the Qing did not repair the wall much, it was not completely forgotten. In times of rebellion or trouble, parts of the wall were still used for defense. Local officials repaired small sections when needed. Some gates continued to serve as customs posts where taxes were collected on goods. But overall, the Great Wall was no longer the empire's main shield. It was more of a fading giant. The Qing dynasty also had a different strategy for defense. Instead of relying on the wall, they relied on diplomacy, alliances, and controlling large areas of land beyond the traditional borders. They expanded their empire into Mongolia, Tibet, and Xinjiang, pushing their control far beyond the old limits of the Ming. By doing this, they created a buffer zone that made the Great Wall less important. For the people living near the wall, life went on. Farmers planted crops in the shadow of its towers. Villagers used stones from the wall to build their houses, not realizing they were taking apart a world wonder. Travelers still marveled at its size, but many sections fell into silence, overgrown with weeds and grass. The mighty dragon of stone began to sleep. Foreign travelers during the Qing period wrote about the wall, often amazed at its scale, but also saddened by its decay. To them, it was both a wonder and a mystery. Why would such a great wall be left to crumble? Some thought it was a sign that China's glory was fading. Others believed it was proof of the empire's greatness, even in ruins. The decline of the Great Wall under the Qing dynasty reminds us of an important truth. Even the greatest achievements can be forgotten if they are no longer useful. The wall had once been China's lifeline, but now it was becoming part of its past. Still, even in its neglect, the Great Wall remained powerful as a symbol. It reminded the Chinese people of their history, their struggles, and their unity. Though emperors no longer cared for it, the people never forgot what it represented. And in time, the world beyond China would come to see the wall not as a ruined defense, but as a treasure of human civilization. For centuries, the Great Wall of China was known mainly to the people who lived within its shadow. But as trade and exploration expanded, foreign travelers began to hear stories of an endless wall stretching across mountains and deserts. When they finally saw it with their own eyes, they were amazed, puzzled, and sometimes even overwhelmed. To them, the Great Wall was not only a Chinese monument, it was one of the greatest wonders of the entire world. Early mentions of the wall came from merchants on the Silk Road, traders from Persia, India, and the Middle East, described a massive barrier that marked the edge of China. They spoke of tall towers, guarded gates, and soldiers patrolling the wall. For many, it became a symbol of mystery. Something that separated the powerful empire of China from the rest of the world. When European explorers finally reached China, their reactions were filled with awe. In the 13th century, Marco Polo, the famous Venetian traveler, visited China during the time of the Mongols. Though historians debate whether he actually saw the Great Wall or not, his stories of China's wealth and wonders spread across Europe. For people in the West, the idea of such a giant wall added to the image of China as a land of secrets and marvels. Later, during the Ming Dynasty and after, European missionaries, traders, and diplomats visited China and saw the wall directly. They wrote detailed accounts describing its size and construction. To them, the wall seemed almost impossible. How could humans build something so long, stretching across mountains and deserts? Many called it the eighth wonder of the world. These foreign reports often focused on the scale of the wall. Travelers were shocked that it could stretch for thousands of miles. Some could not believe it was real until they stood on its stones. They compared it to the pyramids of Egypt, the Roman Colosseum, and other great achievements of human history. But the Great Wall was different. Unlike a single building or structure, it was an entire line of defense running across a continent. Foreigners also noticed the condition of the wall. Some parts, especially near Beijing, were strong and well maintained. Others, far away in the deserts or mountains, were crumbling and broken. To some travelers, this decay was sad, but it also made the wall seem even more mysterious, like an ancient ruin lost to time. In the 19th and 20th centuries, when photography and modern travel became easier, more explorers visited the Great Wall. Pictures of it spread across newspapers and books, and soon the whole world knew about it. Writers described walking along the wall as standing on the back of a giant dragon, looking down at valleys, rivers, and endless landscapes. The wall became a symbol not just of China, but of the strength and endurance of human civilization. For foreign travelers, the Great Wall also carried lessons. Some saw it as proof of China's wisdom, planning, and unity. Others saw it as a warning showing how even the greatest defenses could not always stop invasions. To many, it represented both the strength and the fragility of human ambition. Over time, the voices of these explorers helped make the Great Wall famous worldwide. Their stories turned it from a local monument into a global wonder. Today, when people think of China, the first image that often comes to mind is the Great Wall. It has become not only part of Chinese history, but also part of world heritage, admired by people everywhere. As centuries passed, the Great Wall of China slowly changed from a mighty shield of defense into a silent ruin. By the 1800s and early 1900s, many parts of the wall had crumbled. Without emperors to maintain it and without soldiers to guard it, the stones fell. Weeds grew over the paths, and villagers used bricks from the wall to build their own houses. What was once a proud barrier that defended China for generations had become broken and forgotten in many places. During the Qing dynasty, the wall had already been neglected. And after the fall of the Qing in 1911, China faced new challenges. Civil wars, foreign invasions, and political struggles meant that repairing the wall was the last thing on anyone's mind. The Great Wall was no longer useful for defense in the age of gunpowder, cannons, and modern armies. Against rifles and cannons, the wall was powerless. For many, it was just a relic of the past. The early 20th century, travelers and explorers from around the world visited China and were shocked to see the wall in such poor condition. Some sections near Beijing still stood proudly, but others had collapsed completely, buried under sand and dirt. Many foreigners called for its preservation, but China itself was going through too much chaos to care for it. For ordinary villagers, the wall was simply a source of free stone. Bit by bit, they carried away its bricks for their homes, roads, and farms. But even as it fell into ruins, the Great Wall never lost its symbolic power. Chinese poets, artists, and leaders continued to see it as a symbol of unity and endurance. When the People's Republic of China was founded in 1949, the new government recognized the wall's cultural importance. Slowly, efforts to protect and restore it began. In the 1950s and 1960s, China launched its first projects to repair sections of the wall near Beijing. One of the most famous restored areas is Battling, which became a national showcase. Here, tourists could walk on the wall, see its towers, And imagine the soldiers who once stood guard. This restoration was not just about history, it was about pride. The Chinese government wanted the world to know that the Great Wall was more than ruins. It was a national treasure. As tourism grew, the Great Wall gained global recognition. In 1987, UNESCO declared it a World Heritage Site, calling it one of the greatest achievements of human civilization. This title helped protect the wall and encouraged more preservation projects. Millions of visitors from all over the world came to walk on its stones, turning the Great Wall into one of the most famous landmarks on Earth. Today, parts of the wall are carefully preserved and restored, while other sections remain wild and untouched, stretching across remote mountains and deserts. Some areas are busy with tourists while others are silent, almost forgotten. Together, they show both the glory and the fragility of the wall. The story of the Great Wall in modern times is not only about ruins, it is about rebirth. What was once a broken monument of war has become a source of cultural pride, tourism, and national identity. It reminds China and the world that history is not something buried in books. It is alive, standing in stone, waiting for people to see, touch, and remember. The Great Wall may no longer stop invaders, but it now serves a different purpose: to inspire, to educate, and to connect people to the long journey of human history. The Great Wall of China is no longer a military defense, but in the modern world, it has taken on a new and powerful meaning. Today, it stands as a symbol of Chinese identity and national pride. For the Chinese people, the wall is more than just bricks and stone. It is a reflection of their strength, history, and unity as a nation that has survived for thousands of years. In ancient times, the wall divided China from its enemies. But in modern times, it unites the Chinese people. It reminds them of the courage of their ancestors who carried heavy stones, faced harsh weather, and gave their lives to build something greater than themselves. Every tower and every brick tells a story of sacrifice. Even though many of those workers and soldiers remain nameless, their legacy lives on in the wall that still winds across the land like a dragon. For China, the wall is proof that its civilization has endured through endless struggles. Dynasties have risen and fallen, invaders have come and gone, but the wall remains. When people look at it today, they see not only history, but also the spirit of endurance, the belief that China can overcome any challenge, no matter how great. The Great Wall also carries meaning in politics and culture. In the 20th century, Chinese leaders began to use the wall as a symbol of unity. It became a national icon, appearing in songs, poems, and even patriotic slogans. One famous saying is, "He who has never been to the Great Wall is not a true man." This quote, often linked to Mao Zedong, encouraged people to see the wall not just as an old ruin, but as a challenge to climb, a symbol of strength and a reminder of national pride. In schools, children learn about the Great Wall as one of the most important parts of their history. They study how it was built, why it was built, and what it represents. For them, it is not just about emperors and wars, it is about the story of their people. The wall connects modern generations to their ancestors, reminding them that they are part of something ancient and powerful. The wall also plays a role in China's global image. Tourists from all over the world come to walk along it. And when they do, they see not only a wonder of architecture, but also a symbol of China itself. The Great Wall appears in films, documentaries, and advertisements. It has become a brand for the nation, showing the world that China has a history as vast and enduring as the wall itself. For ordinary Chinese people, visiting the wall is often a deeply emotional experience. Families climb its steps together, students take school trips to learn its history, and couples take photos at its towers. Each visit is a way of connecting to national pride, standing on the wall looking at its endless stretch. People feel both small and powerful, small compared to its scale, but powerful because they are part of its story. The Great Wall is not perfect. Parts of it are broken. Many areas are in ruins and it has seen times of neglect. But perhaps this makes it even more meaningful. Like China itself, the wall has faced hardship, fallen, and risen again. Its survival mirrors the survival of the Chinese people. In the end, the Great Wall has transformed from a shield of defense into a symbol of unity, identity, and pride. It tells the world that China is not just a country, it is a civilization, with a past so deep and a spirit so strong that it continues to stand tall, just like the wall across its mountains. Today, the Great Wall of China is no longer a line of defense against invading armies. Instead, it has become one of the most famous landmarks in the world. Millions of visitors travel to China every year to walk on its stones, climb its towers, and take in the breathtaking views across mountains and valleys. The wall has turned from a fortress of war into a treasure of peace, culture, and tourism. The most popular sections of the wall, such as Battling, Mutianu, and Jinxianaling, are carefully restored and attract huge crowds daily. At Battling, wide stone steps lead tourists up the mountain, where they can see the wall stretch like a dragon's back over the hills. Mutianu, surrounded by forests, gives visitors a quieter and greener experience. Jinxialing offers a mix of restored and wild sections, giving people a chance to see how the wall looked in both its glory and its decay. These areas are symbols of national pride and international wonder. Tourism has brought great benefits, provides jobs for local communities, money for the government, and global recognition for Chinese culture. Souvenir shops, museums, and guided tours share the history of the wall with people from every corner of the earth. Standing on the Great Wall has become a dream for travelers, a bucket list experience that connects them to one of humanity's greatest achievements. But with popularity also comes challenges. The Great Wall is thousands of miles long, and not all of it is restored. In fact, experts say that only about 1/3 of the wall remains in good condition. Many remote sections are crumbling, buried under sand, or damaged by weather and time. In some places, villagers still take stones from the wall to build houses or farms, slowly dismantling it piece by piece. Nature also plays its role. Rain, wind, and plant roots eat away at the stones year after year. Tourism itself can be damaging too. Millions of footsteps on the stone stairs wear them down. Graffiti, littering, and careless climbing harm the ancient structure. While the famous sections are protected, the wild and untouched parts are in danger of disappearing if not preserved properly. Recognizing this, China has launched many preservation efforts. The government has declared the Great Wall a protected cultural relic, and restoration projects continue to repair damaged areas. UNESCO's recognition of the wall as a World Heritage Site in 1987 also helped bring global attention to its preservation. New rules prevent villagers from taking bricks, and strict laws punish those who damage it. Volunteers and organizations also help by cleaning sections, planting grass to prevent erosion, and raising awareness about the wall's fragile state. Technology is now being used to save the wall as well. Drones map the wall from above, satellites track its condition, and 3D scanning helps create detailed digital models for study and restoration. These modern tools allow experts to monitor the wall and find the best ways to protect it for the future. For the world, the Great Wall is not only China's treasure, but also humanity's. It shows what humans can achieve with determination, skill, and vision. Preserving it is not just China's responsibility, it is a duty shared by everyone who values history and culture. The Great Wall's future depends on balance. Welcoming tourists who want to experience its beauty while protecting its stones from further harm. If this balance is kept, the wall will continue to inspire people for centuries to come. From a shield of war to a wonder of peace, the Great Wall has entered a new chapter in the modern world. The Great Wall of China is more than stone, brick, and earth. It is a story written across mountains, deserts, and valleys, as a symbol of sacrifice, determination, and vision. From the days of Qin Shi Huang to the present, the wall has carried many meanings. A shield against enemies, a messenger of unity, a symbol of power, and now, a treasure of the world. Its legacy is not just Chinese, it belongs to all humanity. When we think about the Great Wall, we do not only see a wall, we see the millions of hands that built it, the lives lost to create it, and the soldiers who stood watch under burning suns and freezing nights. Their efforts remind us that history is not made only by emperors and kings, but by ordinary people whose hard work shaped the world. The wall is their monument, even if their names are forgotten. The legacy of the Great Wall is also about human ambition. shows what people can do when they dare to dream big, building a wall more than 13,000 miles long across some of the most difficult landscapes on Earth seems impossible. Yet the Chinese people did it piece by piece, stone by stone, over centuries. The wall proves that determination can turn the impossible into reality. But the Great Wall also teaches us humility. For all its strength, it could not always keep invaders out. Dynasties still fell, and empires still changed. The wall reminds us that no defense is perfect, and no power lasts forever. What remains, however, is the memory of the struggle, the resilience of a civilization, and the lessons of history. Today, the wall stands as a bridge between past and present. For China, it is a symbol of unity, identity, and pride. For the world, it is a wonder that inspires respect and amazement. Tourists who climb its steps feel connected to something larger than themselves. Students who read about it learn that history is alive in the stones of the earth. Artists, poets, and filmmakers continue to draw inspiration from its dragon-like shape across the land. In 1987, when UNESCO declared the Great Wall a World Heritage Site, it recognized that the wall is not only part of Chinese history, but part of the story of all humanity. It belongs to the global family as one of the greatest achievements of human civilization. Just like the pyramids of Egypt or the Colosseum of Rome, the Great Wall tells us that humans, no matter how long ago, dreamed, built, and created wonders that still speak to us today. The legacy of the Great Wall is not finished. It continues to live on, not just in stones and towers, but in the pride of the Chinese people and the imagination of the world. It tells us that we too can build lasting legacies, not necessarily with walls of stone, but with ideas, kindness, and achievements that stand the test of time. As the sun sets over the mountains and the wall casts its long shadow, one thing becomes clear. The Great Wall is not just a monument of the past. It is a living story, whispering to every generation, reminding us of our strength, our struggles, and our shared humanity.